On our panel tonight, Rupa Huq, the Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton, Paul Scully, the Minister for London and Conservative MP for Sutton and Cheam, and zooming in from her home in the Liberal Democrat peer, Baroness Susan Kramer. Thanks for all of you for coming in and for Susan for joining us. You clear, Rupa?
I mean, look, it depends which government minister you ask. So it's interesting to hear what Paul said. But then Lord Bethell said something completely different yesterday.
I think he was slapped down, wasn't he?
Said something else different. Boris Johnson said something different at PMQ. I mean, if the government can't sort of decide in themselves what the policy is, how is the public meant to understand?
Well, essentially, Rupa, we're trying to change. So we're trying to move towards a position, like we did last year when we talked about Stay Alert, letting people have their own heads, understanding the risks around that, though.
Maybe there's a case for getting rid of amber. If it's so sort of flaky, you know, maybe you should do either yes or no, red or green. It's just confusing everyone at the moment.
Let's bring in Rupa. The cost, it's expensive. People can't afford to quarantine either. That's a worry.
Yeah, there should be support so that people can do this, because 10 days, even at home, people won't be able to afford to forego their wages for that long. And also, all these different traffic light things, they all get mixed up together at the arrivals at Heathrow. Anyway, you hear of people for 5 hours all being, you know, they come off different flights, they're at the baggage reclaim or whatever. So that just defeats the whole purpose of it. And there's a kind of separate FCDO list of where you're allowed to go. And then suddenly this traffic light thing came very, very late in the day. I mean, considering that we've had coronavirus for 14 months, only in, I think it was February, only a small number of countries on those lists. I think they need to rationalise it and get their story straight between the government.
Paul, do you think traffic lights perhaps was... We heard from the boss of Southend Airport and they had no flights at all for the first 6 months of this year. You represent a constituency very close to Heathrow. You must be very worried about a lot of your constituents losing their jobs.
I mean, again, I've had conversations with Heathrow. They would like a rates relief for all this and furlough to be extended. But we don't know. We keep reaching these cliff edges and then we don't know what happens after that. And again, sort of the whole crisis, a lot of companies like BA actually have taken advantage of this to do practices like fire and rehire, which is really insulting to people who maybe have worked 30 years for Heathrow to be let go and then told they can have a much worse contract. I don't know how that's still legal. That should be outlawed.
Paul, Ealing, Rupa, is one of the London boroughs where there's been a higher rate of infections than some of the others. It's worrying there.
Yeah, no, we were number one in London for a while and we have had cases of the Indian variant. And I know our council has written today asking that we get surge testing and surge vaccinations as well to combat that. But, I mean, it's true that this traffic light thing, again, that was only really recently. They just seem to be behind the curve, this government. They're meant to be flattening the curve, but all these things. And throughout the entire 14 months, the Piccadilly line, which I took to get in here today, people have been coming with no testing, no temperature, no anything through Ealing and Acton, which may be another reason.
Behind the curve, as Rupa says?
No, I mean, there was a point last year when we felt that we were sort of chasing the virus, but now we're very much at, trying to get ahead of it. So a lot of these variants are being discovered here in the UK because of our ability to do the genomic sequencing. So we're doing a lot of the sequencing for the world, but actually, you talked about Ealing. We've done a lot of the surge testing in Ealing originally for the South African variant and the Brazilian variants. But what we're finding in London at the moment is actually the other variants are being swapped by the Indian variant rather than increasing cases significantly, but they are increasing significantly in other parts of the country from a low base. So we've got to be ahead of it, and that's why we're hitting those areas hard so that we can keep on with the roadmap. And at the moment, it looks like that the vaccination is still effective against those variants.
It's a bit of a shocker, though, that we heard that for 3 whole weeks in May and April, test and trace, the data wasn't getting through to councils, and that's exactly when the Indian variant was surging.
I would point out that Sadiq Khan said this week, praising the government, he says that they've got a grip of test and trace. But anyway, for the moment, let's pause on that.
It just came out today, but yeah.
Now, as London opened up, Labour's had renationalisation of the railways in a couple of manifestos and a couple of general elections. You must welcome this.
Oh, it's a very popular policy, if only it were being enacted. But it's really what we've seen today is a bit of tinkering. It will still be private companies that are running these rail lines. And to be honest, actually, we've had state control of our railways for quite a long time. It just seems to be foreign countries state rail companies running them.
That's because they own some of the train companies.
Yeah, so that's who's bidding for our franchises. So this is a bit of rebadging, but it's not real public ownership, let's call it that. which would mean that the profits go to the exchequer rather than to shareholders, which this will be.
Finally tonight, can we turn to the recent election, the re-election of Sadiq Khan as Mayor of London? Were you surprised it was closer than expected?
I mean, he didn't win on the first round, but I don't think anyone ever has since they created a Mayor of London. And he never took any vote for granted. He campaigns really hard. He came to Ealing, and I think he was fasting as well. He's like a dynamo. It was a good result, and it was more than Boris Johnson ever won London with.
OK, well, thank you to all my guests tonight. That's all we've got time for tonight. So thanks to Rupa Huq, Susan Kramer and Paul Scully. We'll be back next month, but for now, thank you for watching and good night.